external announcements before we get into our Creative Morning stuff. First of all, my name is Lindsay, so I'm the host of Creative Mornings Columbia. So if you are interested in learning more about our chapter or being a part of our organizing team, we're always looking for new volunteers and new sets of people. So just find me or Sarah back in the back if you're interested in helping us out in the future. Couple of announcements before we get into our stuff is, Orr Street Studios is really gracious to let us use this space for free every month, and we're really grateful to that. They've been a really incredible sponsor post-pandemic. It's really hard to get anything off the ground these days, so really appreciate their support. They have a partnership right now with the Boone Library, and some of these are back on the coffee table. What they're doing is they're calling for submissions for this One Read project that they're doing. So it just says, inspired by this year's One Read book, the Big Door Prize, we invite mid-Missouri artists ages 16 and older to contribute works that explore the idea of potential, that capture transformation, or investigate what someone or something might become. And so if you are an artist or you know someone 16 or older who would love to submit a piece of art in conjunction with the One Read book, you can do so through the Boone Library, and there are these forms where you just fill it out and you turn it in at the library and they'll contact you about your submission. So we just like to make sure we highlight these things for local artists in our communities. If you're interested, they're back there on the back. Additionally, Sunitha is one of our community members, and she wanted to make a quick announcement about a project that she's starting.
Oh, good.
Come on up here, girl.
Hi. Oh, I'm gonna move over.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Smitha, and last week I launched a book club called Daring Minds Book Club, and it's for women, so locally in Columbia surrounding areas. So you're welcome to join. I announced a book this morning. It's Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And so if you're interested or want to talk to me afterwards, it's only for women. We'll have one book this rest of this year, and we'll meet in November in person. So if you're interested, let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you ever have a project that you're launching or something that you want to share with the community, feel free to ask me if you can come up and make an announcement. This is open to anybody. Everyone is creative. Everyone is welcome is really our kind of ethos of why we exist. So if there's something that you're working on or doing, please let me know. I'll be happy to give you a platform to announce something like that. So all I have to say, welcome to Creative Mornings. I'd like to start us off by highlighting our social channels. If you're not already following us on Instagram, I'm not super active on Twitter. Twitter gives me a little bit of a mental health crisis, and so I just stay off of it. Instagram feels like a happier place where I can just look at like golden retriever videos and pictures of my friends' kids. So we're more active on Instagram, but we do have a Twitter and Facebook page as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can find us there. You can also find us at CreativeMornings.com and sign up for our newsletters if you're interested in learning more about us. I also want to just thanks to our local sponsor for treating us to coffee and donuts, Lauren, who's in the back. She and her husband Stephen are part of Pro Partners Wealth, and so they were our gracious hosts to buy donuts and coffee for us this month. As a note, we don't make any money doing this, and so myself and our volunteer team, we do this because we think it's a gift to our community. I don't get paid to do it. We don't pay for spaces. We don't pay for really anything. We really rely on the donations of the community because we just want to keep this as a free event, always open to all people. So if you are interested in being a sponsor and donating your time, your space, or even just bringing coffee and donuts for one of our events, we would happily accept that partnership. It also just keeps money out of my hands. I don't like to handle donation money. I don't really want to be responsible for that. So it just keeps things a little more streamlined and people can really donate on their terms. I also wanted to highlight our global sponsors. So our global sponsor is MailChimp. So MailChimp is more than just like an email platform that it used to be. They're a full marketing suite of tools that you can use. So if you're ever interested in getting a MailChimp account, they're a global sponsor and they sponsor all of our chapters across the world. There are discounts for Creative Mornings members, and they do a whole lot of things for small businesses. So if you're interested in that, again, everything can be found at our website. They also just released a report around agencies and freelancers that are sharing their proudest moments of the last year. They do these reports fairly frequently, and they're always really interesting and usually visually stimulating. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can check out MailChimp. I also want to point out just the fact that there are 223 chapters all over the world that are meeting one Friday a month. I just met Kylan here, who's attended the San Diego chapter. I used to be part of the Louisville chapter before I moved here, and I know people have been to a variety of these all over the world. Some chapters are small like ours, and others are, range in the hundreds. We'd love to be that eventually, but just keep in mind that we're not alone, that we're all meeting collectively. One thing I wanted to announce is the field trips. Actually, I'm going to pick on you, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind coming and telling us a little bit more about field trips, since I know you've attended so many of them.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So maybe one that you really enjoyed. So what they do is, before the pandemic, we would do field trips locally in the community. I think we can pick those up again. If there's a local business or studio or creative space that we can all collectively meet in on a Friday morning or even a different day of the week. It's just an experience to learn something new, pick up a new skill, just be inspired by others. But Sarah is our trusty field trip attendee. She's attended dozens, if not 100 of these, I don't know. So I'd love for her to just tell you a little bit more about an example so you can have an idea of what those look like.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a field trip addict, but a lot of times I'll sign up for them so I can get recordings and stuff afterwards, because obviously sometimes you can't always make the live times, but it's really, really neat. As Lindsay mentioned, they do, obviously pre-pandemic, there was a lot of in-person events, so you could go visit galleries or see different workshops, see how different roles worked in different spaces. But once the pandemic happened, everything kind of went online. So there was a couple different, I did a tour of Laguna Beach, California once through a field trip, which was really lovely. It was like a little walking tour. They brought you through everything and played music. I did a joy and networking one. I had a lot of, they brought in like a maker of a conversational card game, so they ran through and you got to meet a bunch of different people and go through different questions that aren't like, hey, nice to meet you, what do you do? It's a better way to kind of understand people's passions and where their energy comes from. So it's a really great way to meet new people from all over and a great way to see other things if you can't leave your home. So love it.
And I love that they do recordings after, so if you can't attend something live, you can always download it later. And everything is always free on the website, so you can get on CreativeMornings.com and click any chapter in the world, and you can view their events, the recordings of their previous Friday morning events, or any of their field trips as well. So
yeah, and I will say too, there's also a lot of skill set ones. So if you're just learning how to do email marketing, or if you're learning how to add more visuals or video to your marketing campaign, like there's a ton of different skill sets around, especially marketing and advertising or creative roles.
they also had like a watercolor one that I really liked, where it was like you just get the supplies and learn how to do like watercolor. It was like a simple skill set that was nice during a time where no one was leaving their house. But if you actually have an idea for a local field trip, please let me know. I would happily figure out how to organize something like that if you have a space. Adonica, our speaker, does some pretty killer events, and so I would love to figure out how she does that and works her magic. So if there are things like that that you think would be helpful for the community, please let us know. Thanks, Sarah. Before we get started, we always like to read the Creative Mornings Manifesto. It's just a reminder of who we are and why we exist. And then once we do that, Diamond's going to read that for us, and then I'll have Sarah introduce our speaker, and I'll get the slide set up for you. Come on up, Diamond.
I was going to move.
Oh, you can do it back there.
Yeah.
Okay. Dramatic.
Not as dramatic as Mike Henderson, sorry. Yeah. Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate with you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from others in jazz hands, virtual claps, and virtual snaps. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in the neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome.
Thank you, Diamond.
I know with the killer branding today.
I know. Matches the background.
So this month's theme is critical, and Sarah on our team does a really great job at picking and selecting speakers that fit the theme. So I'll let Sarah introduce Adonica Coleman, our speaker for this month, and I'll get this slide set up for you while you do that.
Hello. Thank you all again for being here. Obviously, I think Lindsay may have mentioned it, but the first event that Creative Mornings had in Columbia was really exciting. There was a ton of people. We had time to promote everything, so it was lovely. The past few months, obviously, just kind of getting back up and running. We were doing some virtual events for Creative Mornings, but everyone got a little Zoom fatigued, So we're so happy to be back in person. We're so happy that y'all are here. if you hear something from Adonica that you love today, if you love the donuts, if you like the coffee, if you like the energy, the music from Kyron, please put a little post out there, share with your friends and family, help spread the word of Creative Mornings. We want to keep this going. And part of that means that we need attendees to come and celebrate with us. And honestly, it's just kind of been really lovely. It seems like our town's pretty small sometimes, but with all of the universities and the wonderful, everyone is creative, as this mentions. It doesn't mean that you have to be an artist to be a speaker. You don't have to work in a certain medium. I'm sure Adonica has probably some artistic talents too that we don't even know about, but everybody is creative in their own way. And that was why when we see these themes come through, we don't always just say, okay, who's the specific medium artist that does X, Y, Z? I love seeing the themes that we get each month because it can be taken very literally. So, when I kind of see those things come through at first, I'm like, okay, what's the definition of this word so I can really think through this? And then I'll usually have a couple people that pop up in my mind and being like, this really aligns. Adonica's a great example of that. As soon as critical came to play, my brain went to, okay, who do I see bopping around town all the time, looking like such a light, probably making it look like everything is just wonderfully done and executed and simple, which Adonica gave a great kind of analogy the other day or this morning of a little duck kind of swimming with the legs really kicking, but it's just smooth and calm on the water. And that's kind of how I feel like she probably is around the community. So when I was thinking of critical, it didn't bring a sense of like, okay, who do I feel is always like this? It just, she is able to make these critical decisions, and whether or not I don't know where you're gonna go with critical. I'm excited to hear about it. Could be critical decisions in life, could be critical things in the event space. That's what's so wonderful about Creative Morning. Each speaker that we reach out to, I say, hey, this is why I thought of you. Does this align with your soul and your creative journey? Does this speak to you? And if so, take it however you want. So that's kind of fun for me too, because I don't know what they're gonna talk about once they get up here. So I'd love to announce Adonica Coleman. She owns A2D Events. She's also very involved in the community on a bunch of different boards, and I'm so excited to hear all about Adonica's early journey.
Thank you. It is wonderful to be here.
I couldn't figure out how to get it to where you needed it to go, so. There
No.
you go.
Can you see my, okay, good. Yeah, you can't see my notes. I don't have any in there anyway, because that's not how my brain works. So if I had notes in there, I promise you I would not be using them. So, good morning. I am Adonica Coleman, and I'm putting my timer on so I do not go over. I can't do that too. And I am hello! It's Stacy. I am the owner of A2D Events here in town, and we are a full-service event planning company. And we plan corporate events, fundraising events, community events, virtual events. But Ellie, what do we not plan?
Not playing weddings.
She knows I do not plan weddings. She knows that because we have a relationship. And everybody who knows me knows that I do not plan weddings. And you could probably guess the reason that I've chosen not to plan weddings. Because remember how she said that I don't normally look stressed when I'm around? That's why I don't plan weddings. I don't want to look stressed. Anyway, so, it's interesting. When Sarah reached out with the theme of critical, at first I was thinking, okay, so you know what I did? I went to the dictionary and it was like, there's like 4 different versions. There's 4 different ways you can use the word critical. And so what I had to do was think to myself, but how does that speak to you? How does that speak to your story? And so for me, the version of critical that I chose is, let's see, I'm telling you, using somebody else's laptop is always.
I wonder if we maybe could use the arrows.
Yeah, probably so. Oh, look. Too
A little
far.
easier.
Too far. Went too far. It's because I don't know where to press. when
Technical
somebody- I got
errors
it.
are a feature of this
Good.
chapter, not.
Yeah, we're all very
so-
used to
Good, yes. Technology is
Yeah,
a hot mess. Okay, cool. So this is the version of critical that spoke to me, right? So critical is an adjective of the greatest importance. So when you hear that somebody's in critical condition, where does your mind instantly go? You know that it's serious, right? That something needs to be done right away. It's of the greatest importance that this person is cared for. And so I can think of 3 points in my journey where I knew I had to make a critical decision. And so I'm gonna just walk through kind of the evolution of A2D Events from the beginning, and then I will point out those 3 points that felt very critical to me at the time. So in the beginning, so I started this company in 2011 on an accident. I always say I fell into event planning. I did not go to school for it. I never in my wildest dreams when I was young thought, I'm gonna be an event planner. Never thought of that. But I was at home, raising children, staying home, and I was bored to death. I have always been a creative person. Initially out of high school, I went straight to cosmetology school, learned how to make people look really good. And then later on in life, I decided when I stopped practicing cosmetology, I went to school for interior design. I got a certification in interior design. And so some people will look at those things and say, oh, those things seem really different. But if you think about it, they all require the creative process. They all start something one way, something starts one way, and then you help transform it into something else. So whether it's your hair, or your home, or your event. So my mind works in that way. I'm a creative, my brain is like the Tasmanian devil all the time, just spinning. I have to stop myself in order to make myself focus. So in the beginning, I was approached by a friend who said, hey, I know you're creative. I'm wanting to plan a 40th birthday party for my wife. It's a surprise. Can you help me do that? And I was bored, so I was like, of course I can help you do it. And that is when I got sucked into the world of Pinterest. Pinterest was fairly new at that time, and it was my first exposure to it, and I loved every minute of it. I saw all these amazing ideas, and I thought, oh, we can do this, we can do this. And then he called me a couple days later, and he said, you know, this is more work than I thought it was gonna be. He's a lawyer, so he has not a creative bone in his body. And he said, would you mind just taking it all over for me and planning the whole thing? I said, are you gonna give me your credit card? And he said, yes. And I said, you got it, you got a deal. And that is really how I fell in love with taking somebody else's money, somebody else's idea, in order to plan an amazing event. And so that was my first step into the world of event planning. I planned that event, and after that event was over, they came to me and said, you did such a phenomenal job with that. Have you ever thought about doing this for a living? I had not, but it opened the door, and I began to. So in the beginning of my career, here are the kinds of things that I was doing. I was doing lots of small social events. And I started by just putting a post on Facebook and saying, does anybody have an event that they're planning that they would like me to help with? I'll do it for free. And somebody thankfully took me up on that. And so I started planning very small things. You can see that I was big on, everything being color coordinated, everything, that was my thing. I could take a thing from nothing to something, and I was going to do every little bit of it into whatever that thing was. So that is really how I started. So these were the kinds of things I was doing at first, and I somehow, because event planning is visual, when you start posting pictures like this on social media, then people start calling you to say, hey, my kid's having a birthday party. Do you think you can help me plan that? You would not believe the amount of money that a parent will spend to have somebody else plan their child's birthday party, and all they have to do is show up with the kid. And it looks just like what they saw on Pinterest. And so I got stuck, honestly, for years planning kids' birthday parties, right? It was fun. I got a chance to sharpen my skill set and to learn how to deal with some people that were maybe not as difficult as a bride's mother, but close. But I knew in my soul that I did not want to do that forever. I knew it. But I had to figure out, how do I get out of this? What do I do? How do I make that change? And so really, there was my first critical step. I needed to make a change, and I needed to figure out how to do it. I was approached by a friend who was at that time, she and her husband owned a home building and development company, and she approached me and said, hey, I'm the president of the Home Builders Association. We need to have a golf tournament, and that golf tournament needs to raise money. Do you think you can help me do that? I know that's not your specialty, but I'm thinking, and I said, I had to make a decision. I really didn't know how to plan a golf tournament, but I knew I could probably figure it out. And so I said to her, and because we were friends, I could be honest, I said, I've never done it, but I think I can figure out how to do it. And she said, I trust you, let's do it. And so that was my first critical decision in this journey, where I had to make a decision. I'm gonna step into something that I'm not really comfortable with, but I'm gonna figure it out. So what I found is that the processes of event planning is the same. Regardless of whether you're planning a kid's birthday party, even a wedding or a corporate event. The processes are the same. So that is really how I ended up. That was my first step from the pictures you saw to pictures like these. So I have worked with almost every nonprofit organization and corporation in Columbia, and sometimes outside of Columbia. That's the Boone Hospital Gala. I think there was a 400 person event. That's a CFS fundraiser, and that is Columbia and Safety Supplies holiday party. I do their holiday party every single year. I think they would absolutely come and find me if I told them that I was done. They start calling me in May. Hey, are you on the books for December? So that was my first critical step to move from doing much smaller social events into much larger corporate and fundraising events. So that was my first critical move. So as I started spending years working, meeting people, building relationships in this space, 2020 happened. Okay, so by that time, I had already been in this space for a few years. 2 years prior to 2020, I was invited to teach a class at Stevens. Ellie was one of my students in the event planning program at Stevens. They invited me over to teach one class, and by the end of my 2 years, I was teaching all the classes in the whole department. I had a great relationship with my students. They were a very small group, and in 2020, we talked the administration of Stevens into letting us go to Las Vegas. They paid for it. Go to Las Vegas to the biggest event planning conference that happens in the United States, called the Special Events Show. And I think we were there with about 7,000 event planners and production people from all over the world. It was an amazing experience, but it was 2020. I will never forget the dates. It was March 9th through 12th of 2020. So because everybody knows what happened March 9th through 12th of 2020, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to play a little video that's going to explain how my second critical move came to be. I hope. I'm going to press play. See what happens. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this quick story because I just know you're going to love this. So the first week of March, kind of the week that we know that the pandemic kind of really expanded and blew up and became super, like, sports were canceling, that particular week.
For the third time this week, a major convention pulls out of McCormick Place.
After this convention would have brought in $19 million.
Even more, the sports world rocked by the coronavirus. The every escape and rally point is being halted.
Are struggling with making decisions about schools reopening and church services.
I was at a national event planners convention in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay with 9 event planning students. And we were in this convention bubble in Las Vegas, and it seems that the world was crumbling around us. Our entire industry was crumbling, and we did not even know. As I started to get the news, I remember having that sense of dread, and I remember sitting in one of those seminars with thousands of people and all these lights and cameras and smoke, and people just had that deer in the headlights look, because the very planners that were in that room from all over the United States were losing contracts right as we sat there. Contracts were canceling, events were canceling. And I remember flying back on the airplane in a totally different headspace. Our business will not be the same. I don't know for how long, but it will not be the same, and I have to think of another way. And so I started to research. I just went online and I said, I know there are a couple of companies that do virtual events, let me look them up. I looked them up, I sat through their hour-long demos. Then more started to pop up, of course, as I think it became evident that the pandemic was not going away in a week. And I sat through every demo of every new company that popped up. And I kept thinking to myself, oh, this is nice, it does this one thing nice, but it doesn't do this other thing. I really want something that's cookie cutter. I really want something that's not just for conventions. I really want something that's not just for meetings. What else is there? I could not find that thing. And so I started to think, wouldn't it be great if I could just create my own thing? My own thing that does all these crazy ideas that I have in my head, right? If I have a client that's supposed to have a gala, can we reproduce that virtually somehow?
Each year, the Carter Center puts on a national conference for K-12 educators on improving Black history education.
Because of COVID, it had to go online. This year, we had the opportunity to view the conference through Venue Live Solutions, which adopted our conference only the week of.
They called my dear friend Adonica Coleman over at Venue Live Solutions, and from somehow, with some type of magic, between Monday and Friday,
it was an incredible event with tons of synchronous events happening online at the same time.
I had never seen anything like it. They had, I think, 6 rooms going simultaneously. As a participant, you could walk in and out of or visit each and every room when there was sessions offered concurrently. So I was able to just pop in whatever was of interest to me. Once you got in the session, you opened a window and you could participate in that chat.
Not only did I walk away from the conference inspired and renewed, but absolutely committed to contact Venue Live Solutions for any online organizing or conferencing that I intend to do in the future.
And that's where Venue Live Solutions was born. So that was my second critical move. No, pause. We already saw that. That was my second critical move. I had to determine, and seriously, Ellie can tell you, when we came back through the airport from Las Vegas, everybody was looking at each other like this in the airport. So imagine, you're just learning about COVID, how serious it is. You know that the world is planning to shut down, and we're all in the airport. And we have to fly home on a plane, and nobody knows. Nobody knows what this is or what's going to happen. So we all came back a little bit different, I would say. I locked myself in my office for the next 2 months, trying to figure out how I could stay in business. Because I knew that I could not stay in business operating the way that I had been operating, because nothing was moving in the world. People couldn't get together. So our industry, the hospitality industry, was really heavily affected by what happened with COVID. And I knew that if I didn't make a change right then, it was critical. I had to make a change, or else I wouldn't be standing here now. And so because I was able to partner with some tech people and create a platform that worked for people who, while they couldn't get together physically, they still needed to get in front of their audience. They still needed to talk to their donors. They still needed to raise money. They still needed to make the audience aware of what was happening, because those nonprofits that I work with, I was the most concerned about the nonprofits. Not necessarily the corporate people, but the nonprofits. People needed their services more than ever. So the money still needed to come in, but they had to get in front of people. And so I was committed to creating something that they could use. And I will tell you that in 2020, when I first started calling people, they thought I was crazy. I called my nonprofits first and said, hey, we probably need to rethink what's happening in November. I know this is April, but we probably should rethink what's happening in November, because you probably won't be able to get together. Oh, no, we'll just reschedule it. We'll just push it back. It's fine. Well, obviously we all know that it wasn't fine, and that we couldn't just reschedule for, another month out. We had to have a virtual way to get in touch with people. And so that period between the end of 2020 all the way through 2021 was really one of my most financially successful periods in business. And it was because I was able to step out and make that critical change at the time when it was needed. Even when at the beginning people were like, I have no idea what this lady is talking about. So those relationships that I made during that time, it caused people to trust me, honestly, because I was able to help them do something that they couldn't see how they were going to make their way out of it. They couldn't figure it out. I was able to walk alongside them and help make that happen. And so it really helped deepen a lot of my community relationships during that time. And I believe that time is what led me to being nominated as Small Business of the Year finalist this year, as one of the 5 finalists this year. Thank you. Thank you. And it was truly because of, obviously, the work that I have been able to do during that time, and the walking alongside our community members who needed us the most. And so I truly believe that work and those relationships were what helped lead me to that point. And I'm very proud of that, honestly. I'm very proud of that. I worked hard for that. And so I always talk, when I'm talking to anybody, about relationships. I truly believe that almost everything in life is about relationships. Business relationships, personal relationships, community relationships, those things matter. And why do they matter? Because we need each other. And when you need each other, you like to be able to have somebody call you if they need you, and you like to be able to call somebody else if you need them. And that's one thing I love about this community in Columbia. When you know people, you have a relationship, it is so easy to pick up the phone and be like, hey, this is what I need. Do you think you can help me? And if that person can't help you, then they can find somebody else who can. And I appreciate that. And so what I'm gonna do is show you this next video. And I'm showing you this video for two reasons. One, it's an amazingly creative, awesome video. Brad Crum did this video. I don't know if anybody knows Brad Crum. He owns Brad Crum Creative, but this video is absolutely amazing. And I want you to take note of the people who are in the video doing testimonials for me. And it will speak to the relationships that I was able to build during that time. And so that's why I've included this, and also it takes up another 4 minutes.
All right, next up.
Hi, my name's Adonica Coleman, and I would like to introduce to you my favorite person, my wife, Adonica. She is the mother of our 4 daughters, very active in our community, and on top of all of that, she is CEO of A to the Events, the most exciting and dynamic event planning company here in mid-Missouri. But don't just take my word for it.
She's brilliant. Her energy and her enthusiasm is really contagious. Throws something at her. She, in a split of a second, will throw 25 different better ideas back at you.
So how does she do it? Is she Superwoman? Well, she does have superpowers. Organization. She is super organized, so your event will be too. Great taste. Ensure that every aspect of your next event is done just right. And energy, with the power to tackle and conquer every detail of your next event. But don't just take my word for it. She brings her 100% of herself to every event. Everything is organized and ready to go. But then when we actually do the event on, Adonica is always completely there, engaged, enthusiastic, and it shows.
I'm no superwoman. My secret is my amazing team. I work with the best suppliers so you get the best event for your money. Her team is amazing. What she has created for us here in Columbia is just wonderful. Did I always want to plan events? No. But when a friend asked me to plan a 40th birthday party, everything changed. I realized that this was something that could get me up smiling every morning. Making people special moments even that much more special. And it was not easy at first. We built this company one event at a time. Now it's fun to look back at what we've accomplished. When I had my first book come out, we did a big launch event and got the entire thing. The evening went wonderfully. I did nothing great about the cake. But then there was a little surprise to me when I got to my hotel room. She put together this little special care package for me that it really just touched me and made the night seem special. I've handled everything from elaborate kids parties to large-scale corporate, community, and fundraising events. And here are just a few examples. When the pandemic hit, we quickly pivoted to virtual events, giving a custom touch that elevated them way above the Zoom box. She had us step above. She created her own platform. She came out of nowhere with these beautiful, interactive platforms that would really engage the audience. And it was nothing like anyone else had ever done. She called, like I said, on Monday. She engaged to offer a platform that would hold hundreds of participants. And she was able to put it together between Monday and Thursday. It went off without a hitch. Fantastic. And when the call comes for an MC service to add personality and electricity to any life, we got you there too with ACDC MC. DeMarco and I work together seamlessly to keep your
That's amazing.
always on track.
Donovan and DeMarco have emceed a number of programs from our awards banquet to after-hour programs to fundraisers for us, and everything that they do with it, they bring the audience into it. So they really make them a part of it, make them feel special. Superwoman or super team, you decide. But you can count your next event to be supercharged with A to the Events.
Thank you so much, dear husband, for being my super pitch man. When it comes to emceeing, we do make a pretty good team. But again, don't just take our word for it.
Adonica and Marco together are this timeline.
It's amazing how her brain works.
She brings people together.
She has it all under control. I just love working with her.
So that's a fabulous video right there. Brad did truly an amazing job. Every time I watch that video, it makes me smile. It's a great video. So that was just a little plug for Brad. It's not here. But if you need something done, he's great to work with. But when I was sitting down and Brad said, hey, we need some people to do some testimonials. Do you think you can come up with 4 or 5 people? And honestly, I said, I can probably come up with 20 people. I had to sit down, make a list, and pick who I was going to use. And so that really speaks to the power of relationships. I didn't have one person waffle. I didn't have one person saying, oh, wait, maybe not. I'm not sure, I'm busy that day. Everybody said, yes, I will take time out of my schedule to come down and film this for you. We didn't give anybody the script. We didn't tell anybody what to say. What you heard was their natural, that was what came out of their mouth when the cameras rolled. And that really speaks to the power of building relationships in our community. And so when you think back to these critical changes that I've thought about, that I've made up to that point, it's all been about building relationships with people, obviously providing the service that I promised. Like, obviously, that's number one. Be able to provide the service that you promised and communicate if something goes wrong and then you can't do that. And I'm a big fan of building relationships with people that last. And so that's why I'm so heavily involved in our community. It's why you probably recognize, even through some of the clips of some of the virtual things, like faces of different people all throughout the community in all different places. It's because I truly value the power of relationship building in this community. So that's the first. So you've heard about the first, second critical. So now let's talk about the third critical move. So I am in the midst of it right now, like right now. You guys are catching me right in the midst of this third critical move in this journey. And so you guys are the very first group of people to hear me say this out loud, that this is the new project that I'm working on for next year and this is where I'm going. So, you know, when you leave here, you talk to people about what happened at Creative Mornings, be like, we got a special announcement that's happening that most people probably don't know about. There are a few people in this room that know about it because I have consulted with some very trusted people that I have relationships with to try to talk this through and see, does this even make sense? But it's a big move. It will change the way I do business 100%. It's a big move for me. So, all right, no, we already heard you. All right, so the next critical move is the Como 411 with AC. So what is the Como 411 with AC? Well, the Como 411 with AC will be an online-based weekly talk show that I will host that will keep all of Columbia and the surrounding areas informed about everything that is happening with our community. So it will spotlight nonprofits, it will spotlight local organizations, it will spotlight what's happening in our community now. And I will tell you that the idea for this really was born at the end of 2021, when I was still working very heavily in the virtual event space. Because I had worked so closely virtually with so many different organizations and began to be able to see behind the scenes what the needs were, what was happening, one thing I would always hear when I was working with nonprofits was, when we're having an event or when something is coming up, how do we let people know about it? Is there a community calendar? Is there one place that we go that we know that has everything that's happening in our community? And really, there's really not. Yes, there are community calendars. The Chamber has one, I'm sure the CBB has one. A couple of the magazines have them. But can you think of one place that you go where you say, I know that this place is gonna have all the information about what's happening in Columbia? There's really not. And so what I began to see was a void. And so doing the virtual presentations, a lot of the virtual events that we did during that time, I hosted. So doing that and being in front of the camera and talking, you can see I like to talk, I can talk. And I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator. I like that. I became very comfortable with that. So at the end of 2021, I said to myself, so here's the difference between last year and this year. I said to myself, this is what I'm gonna do next year. This is the direction I'm gonna go in next year. But I didn't say it out loud. I didn't write it down. I just said it to myself in my head. I said, when 2022 starts, I'm not gonna take as many events because I'm gonna be working on this. But I said all that to myself. And so this year, you know what happened at the beginning of 2022? Well, when events started to come back in person, people started to call me, right? Because that's what I had been doing. And so what did I do? I fell right back into the same pattern. Of course I'll take your event. Of course I'll do this. Yes, absolutely. And so I spent all this year doing the same thing that I had been doing, even though I knew I was being nagged in the back of my mind. You had this idea, you need to flesh it out. But I was doing what I normally did. And then as I began to move in a different direction, my subconscious just would not let this idea go. And so finally I said, I need to speak this out loud. I need to talk to some other people about it to see if other people feel like it makes sense, not just to me in my Tasmanian devil head, but out loud to other people. Does this make sense? Does this seem like something that could work? And I started to talk to people out loud. And people got behind it. And they said, yep, what do you need? Tell me what you need, and we will help you make it happen. And so I'm very fortunate that I am building a team that is ready to go. Sunitha is on my team. She's one of the first people I talk to about it. I need people on my team who believe in it, who are ready to help me make it happen. And so we will be launching somewhere in the first quarter of next year, the Como 411, where we hope to be a one-stop shop for everything that is happening in Como. So, as I wrap up, I'm gonna say, if your mind is starting to go like this, if you're starting to think, oh, that may be a good place for me to talk about my nonprofit, Joe. Or, oh, that may be a good place for me to talk about what's happening in Mosey. Or, oh, maybe the chamber should get behind this. Then talk to me. I've got cards, you can call me, you can text me, you can send me a message on Facebook. I want to have as many community partners as possible to make this work, so that we can then be known as the place where you go, where you watch, where you log in, where you go to the website and say, this is what's happening in our community. So that, I'm in the midst of my next, third, maybe final, I don't know, probably not final, critical step, because that's how I move. But I just want to encourage everybody who can hear me, don't be afraid to make the changes. Change is not always, it's scary, it is, it's scary to me right now. And I feel like I have a lot of support, but it's still scary to think of changing over from something that you've been doing to something different. But don't be afraid to consider the change, to make the change, and to think about, gosh, when you start to feel that urge, it feels critical. It's critical that I do something different right now. Then I encourage you to at least explore it, follow it, and see where it ends up. Thank you guys for your attention. 30 minutes and 30 seconds.
That was wonderful. We do have a few minutes, and if anyone has any questions for Adonica, this is like her Q&A round. Feel free to kind of raise your hand, and we can start popping through some questions.
Can you put us on the Como 411?
Yes, 100%, absolutely, no doubt.
Well, while everyone's thinking of things, I am curious. I live by my Google Calendar. That's kind of, my brain is also, Lindsay knows that she works with me. My brain's all over. I'm always thinking of stuff, so I have to have my Google Calendar. But I'm curious to know, you manage way more than I do too, and do it successfully. So I'm curious, what are some of your tools and tips and tricks for like staying organized and sticking to follow-ups?
Well, so I have my business. You saw I have 4 daughters. One of them is an adult, but she still calls. And so that, I have my husband. I'm a part-time coach at the Women's Business Center. Part-time on staff at our church, director of outreach, and I'm on 4 boards. So this calendar on this phone is like, if my phone ever went down, I don't know what I would do. But I'm also a write it down person. Like, I'm old school. I have to write everything down and see it in front of me. So I have a planner and like a whole wall full of whiteboards in front of me and this. And so I have 4 different email addresses. So I spend my day like checking one the other, make sure. Because my biggest fear is that I'm gonna miss something that I committed to. Like that's a real, like it scares me. So I try to write everything down and put it in my Google Calendar as soon as I make it. Now, sometimes I get twisted up. And luckily, the people who are closest to me, they understand that I'm doing a zillion different things, and they will remind me. I'm not kidding. I have a group of friends that will text and be like, "Are you supposed to be at this United Way meeting this morning?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm on my way." And by the way, DeMarco and I are also the co-chairs for this year's United Way campaign. So we'll be around. You'll see us. Here's an example. I was trying to book a meeting with Sunitha for next week. And she sent me her availability, and I said, "Oh yeah, I can do Tuesday morning at 9:30. She goes, "Aren't you doing Caffeinated Minds at Will's Business Center at 9 o'clock on Tuesday?" I was like, "I sure am. Thank you very much." Let's change that to Monday. And so I really depend on the people around me too to help me figure it out. Really, my plan moving forward is to simplify, because I realize that this is a pace that you really can't. You can keep it up for a season. But do I want to live like this forever? No. So I have, and this is a way to hold me accountable, just like when I said this to a group of people, and I'll see somebody next month, and they'll be like, "Hey, how's the Combo 411 going?" Like, I'm not going to be like, "What are you talking about? I'm not doing that anymore." It's accountability. I have also tendered my resignation to the Missouri Women's Business Center. As much as I love it, and as much as I have enjoyed my 2.5 years there, I know that I cannot devote the time to a new project and also be doing that. So it's calendar, written calendar, electronic calendar, and friends who are like, "Girl, get your ass over here. You know you're supposed to be at the thing at 2 o'clock today." So that's really how it works. I don't know if this is the best system.
No, but I love the honesty, because sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, you see people that seem like they just have it all together all the time.
Yeah,
So it's really good to know, like, hey, everyone, we all make mistakes sometimes. And that was going to be my other question, unless anyone else had one, was, you know, a time when you kind of failed or you messed up,
yeah,
and what you learned from that.
I will tell you, people ask me that, especially because event planners, like, events are, the client expects their event to be perfect, even though there's no such thing as perfection. That's what they expect. And I want to try to deliver as close to that as possible. What I've learned is to try to prepare my clients up front for the things that could happen. I've done this enough to where I can almost envision, okay, this could happen. We're doing this outside. It could rain, like we need tent. So I try to prepare my clients up front, and then so it's not as much of a big deal if something does go wrong at the end. So yes, I remember planning this really large event for this client in Jeff City, and they were they're business owners, and they have like 200 employees. The husband and wife were both turning 40, and they wanted to say thank you to all their clients. So it was this huge outdoor thing. And they wanted this particular band from St. Louis. And so I booked the band from St. Louis, which was a huge feat because they're a band that's super busy. And so I booked them. And when I sent them the dates that the couple was thinking about to have this party, they said, "Oh no, we're not available that day. But if they could move it to the next weekend, then we can do it." And I said, 100%, yes, that works. And they were like, "Yes, like to have this band, we will move our event from this weekend to the next weekend." So I'm like, "Oh, look how good I am. We are good. I got it." Well, the original date was a Saturday in August. I assumed that the date that the band was talking about was the following Saturday, because Saturday was Saturday. No, they had us down for Friday of the following week. I did not realize it. I was planning with them for at least 6 months. I didn't realize it until the week of. When I reached out to the band on Monday and said, "We are so excited to see you on Saturday," and they said, "We have you down for Friday." And I was like, no, it's Saturday. And that was truly one of those. I was probably 5 years into my career at that point. I've had the business for almost 11. That was really like one of those moments where your stomach literally falls. Like you can feel your stomach drop. And they said, we're booked on Saturday. There's nothing we can do. We can do it Friday night. So that meant a couple things. That meant I had to call my client and say, "Remember that band that you really wanted, that you've been talking about for 8 months? We don't have them." I had to call my client and say that, which was probably one of the worst conversations I've had. And I lost the deposit. The band was not cheap. It was like a $5,000 band.
Wow.
We had paid them $2,500 to book. I had to eat that. And I'm saying early in your career, when you don't have money, like I bootstrapped my business. I don't have money just like laying around. That was huge for me. But it taught me a lesson. I spent that whole week like calling all these bands. Everybody was already booked, so we ended up with some like, it was bad. Some like bootleg. It was bad. It was not what they wanted. They were gracious, but what I learned was to measure twice and cut once. I will never, and I would tell my students, like, you read that contract as many times as you need to read it and make sure that the dates and that the services that you're supposed to get are correct. So yeah, I mess up all the time. That was just one that stuck out to me that, yeah, I remember. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh yeah, I'll share anything almost with anybody.
Ask questions. Anyone else? Anyone?
Ellie?
What other event planners will you refer your current clients to?
Yes, so I will be doing that. I am also selling all my event supplies. I have 2 storage units full, so I will be selling those at the end of the year. I do have some events that I already committed to this year that I will finish out, but I'll be doing that. Anytime anybody calls me for a wedding, I'm always like, hey, here are all the wedding planners in Columbia, call them. But I will refer, it just depends on what they're calling for. I am a big fan of Blue Diamond. That's Lisa and Jonathan. I'm a big fan of them. I know that Andrea Lynn does some very niche, kind of smaller things. I actually think, I talked to her about possibly buying some of my event supplies because I think that could be really well with her Come On Picnics thing. Obviously, I send all my venue people down to you guys at the atrium anyway. But yeah, I'll have to, those relationships again come in handy. And so that's what I'll do. Stephen, right?
Yeah, well, why didn't you sell your book of business?
Stephen, you just gave me an idea. Very possibly. That's an idea. And you know what's interesting? Somebody just told me yesterday, when it comes to creating this show, to start a binder. Somebody just said, start a binder of all your processes from the beginning, every pitfall, everything that you learn, how you get sponsors, like all that. Because there are other communities that are about the same size as Columbia that might want to reproduce this. And then you can take that book and say, this is how you reproduce this. Write that down for our meeting on Monday. This is how you reproduce this. And so that's a really good idea and something that I probably need to look into, for sure.
Yeah, you got something.
Yeah. But I will tell you that my Columbia Safety and Supply, I talked to them yesterday about their party this year, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna be changing up, and they were like, well, what do you mean? Because next year we're gonna do this again. So I will keep probably 2 or 3 clients because I've done their event over and over, and I can probably do it with my eyes closed at this point. I like working with them, so I don't know. If you don't get that call, then be like, what did I do wrong? I'm just kidding. It's fine. And?
Well, one of the things I've noticed about you is that you tend to you really immerse yourself in something. Like when everything shut down, you were unavailable for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And your eyes were only on screen. So what else would you say are some of your qualities that have, because even though you say you're Tasmanian, you're extremely direct. What else?
Yes, like literally to the point where my husband was knocking on the office door. What are you doing in there? I was like, I know you think I'm not working. Like, you don't have any events, but I have to learn this. So I do get laser focused at some point when it's something that I'm really passionate about. So just like with this, when I'm passionate, I can get focused. But then I am really like this. Like in my mind really works like that. So I'm the person that pops up at 3 o'clock in the morning because the thoughts won't stop. I'm that person. And until I write it down, like I would try to lay there and be like, I'm just gonna force myself to sleep. That does not work. So I keep either my phone by my bed with notes, and that's when I put the note. Once I get it out of my head, then I can go back to sleep. But I have to get it out. But yeah, I can be laser focused when I have to be.
Because we saw your husband, we didn't see you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was busy. I was busy learning a new skill set.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you think about critical decisions, like what things do you kind of what things do you ask yourself in that process?
I try to start, I normally visualize the end first, normally. So when I know I have to make a change and it kind of scares me, when I know that I'm in the midst of something critical, I can flip something easy and, quickly. Oh, yeah, I can do that instead of doing this, no problem. But when I get a little, because I'm not really a stressy person, and I'm not really a nervous, fearful person. That's really just not my personality. But when I start to feel that, then I know it's kind of a big thing. And so I start at the end, and I say, what can this be? How can this end up? And then I try to work my way back. So I always consider the ending. And another thing that I always have to consider is, how much of my time is it going to take? And what is going to have to give in order for me to make this work? Because one thing that I learned this from my husband who's in sales, he's like, you can't take from here, you can't put in here without taking from here, right? If you have a balloon and you push the balloon, the air doesn't go away. There's an indentation, but it comes out on the other side. So I always have to consider, if I'm gonna give myself to this, then what is that gonna take away from? So that's really important, especially when you have kids that are still small in the house and in school. Ellie?
I have one more question. I'm surprised that being a professor at Stevens wasn't a critical move, because obviously it was so impactful for all of us, but I guess how did you weigh those critical moves, and why was that not one of them?
Because when they called me, it was pitched to me as, you're just gonna teach this one class, right? And I knew, so here's what's funny. I did not know, even though I had been an event planner and had taken interns for a long time, I did not know that Stevens had an event planning program. Does anybody else know it?
Well, there's not one anymore.
There's not one now, but there was, and I didn't know. And so I was intrigued by the fact that they had a program that I didn't know about. Once I learned more about the program, I realized that opposite of MU, which is more textbook in-class learning, Stevens was more hands-on. And so the class that they invited me to teach was a practicum class. And so in my mind, I was like, I can teach a practicum class. I don't have the kind of degree that would put me in front of a classroom as a professor, but can I do a practicum class where I have to take students and practically get them out in the community and plan events and learn the hands-on 100%. So that was an easy choice for me. I was like, 100% I can do that. I felt like it would be good for you guys to get the experience. And it worked well for me because then I had a team of students that were working on events with me. So they got a chance to get hands-on experience that some students in other programs probably would not have gotten. So that was an easy fix for me. I didn't know I was gonna end up teaching the whole program. So at the time, I was like, oh yeah, one practicum class, yeah, I can do that. So, I don't know, it probably could have, if they had called me and said, you're gonna take over the whole program, probably would have been a little different. Probably would have felt critical.
I work at Stevens. I'm the new program chair of comp design.
Awesome.
But one thing that I noticed is that you're super organized, and what I always wonder is do you have any tips for directing a team of students? We have Creative Inc., our friend marketing firm, and that's always something that is possibly the more difficult things. So yeah, if you have any advice.
You know what, here's what's funny. In my head, I'm not super organized. I don't feel super organized, but then I catch myself making these lists. I am a huge list maker. So I probably have in my purse, I'm not kidding, 8 different little pieces of paper with lists on them. And I go back to those lists. We were talking this morning about how great it feels to cross things off my list. And that is basic. And it seems crazy, but it is really what I use to try to keep myself on track. I am a list maker. And so I encourage my students or anybody or interns, please create a list. Please use a checklist. Please use a day of event checklist. Please check all the things off those lists. That, to me, that's what helps keep me organized to where I'm not dropping the ball all over the place. And I'm doing things in the time in which they should be done. So I'm a list maker. Lists are my life.
And I guess one other part to that, do you use any sort of organization apps or anything?
I do not. They don't work for me.
You see,
I've tried.
Yeah,
I've tried Trello. I have tried, the little color-coded cards online. I have tried for some reason, I don't know, they don't work for me. Maybe I haven't devoted that laser focus to those, but they don't work for me.
At the beginning, especially when you were when you're using your own money to start things up, how were you handling the budgeting and financing and also the accounting? Did you ever hire a personal accountant?
So in the beginning, I was not. I was simply being like, ooh, look at all these event supplies I want to buy. I'm just going to buy them with my own money and stick them in the storage unit and hope I use them one day. It honestly probably took me 3 years to start really getting serious about the financial piece of the business. And at that time, I was doing it myself. I was using QuickBooks online, like that kind of process. And eventually, yes, I did hire somebody to help keep me. We have some really great small business bookkeepers in town. Bloom Bookkeeping is one of them. I'm just throwing that out there. We have some really great ones, and I encourage anybody else to, from the beginning. Like when I talk to people now through the Women's Business Center who are starting businesses, I encourage them to start there from the beginning as opposed to having to backtrack. Because it's harder to clean up those messes. And then you're embarrassed, like you don't even want to take your paperwork to somebody professional because you're like, I've been messing this up for the last 3 years, but here you go, dig me out of this. So I encourage people from the beginning now to be organized in that manner and to pay attention to the financial pieces. It's much easier to start that way than it is to try to go back.
And a follow-up to that is related to, getting a tax ID number and all of that. Is that something you encourage?
Yes.
Right
off the bat. Even, like I tell people when they come into the Women's Business Center, I say, even if your idea is just an idea at this point, go ahead and get the LLC and the EIN number now. Like, get that now. Because what you don't want to do is jump into business and then 2 years later, we have had people come to us 3 years in and say, I never did the proper paperwork. So yes, right up front, get your paperwork. Even if you don't use it, it's okay to have it. It's okay to have it, Stephen.
Tell her how easy that is, because someone will try to charge you $500.
Please do not pay $500 for it. When you Google it, all these third-party people are going to pop up and say, it's $500, $300. It's not. Through the Secretary of State, it's $52 to do it, and it takes about 15 minutes online. And if you need help, you can call the Missouri Women's Business Center and get that help for free. That was just a side note.
I think as I'm listening to you talk, and everybody's asking, what app do you use and how do you stay organized, which may be the wrong question because I see you as a doer. So, like, usually people that accomplish things is because they're not afraid to fail 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So they don't have it all organized. They don't have the perfect apps.
Yes.
To do it. What are some of the things that help you get from start to I just did it?
You are right about that. I really am just a doer. That's who I am on the inside. When it comes to anything, if something needs to be done, I'm gonna get it done, no matter what. I'm that person. So I don't know. It's an inner thing. I don't know. It's who I am.
Is it your partnership? I mean, like obviously you've got somebody to help encourage you. What are the pieces that help you because it gets hard.
It does.
When you fail. So what is like the thing that got me from here to here? Is it people? Is it inner?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination. It's an inner thing, and it's also the people I surround myself with.
There you go.
I do not surround myself. Listen, I don't do negative energy. I don't do stress. I don't do, you have to do this. I surround myself with people, honestly, who hold me accountable and lift me up. The people that we surround ourselves, relationships are one of the most important factors in our lives. The people we surround ourselves with are very important. And for me, as somebody who doesn't work for another company, it's important to me because I get down. There's some days I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. Having people around you that you carefully, I carefully curate my circle. I don't just let anybody in. I don't just want anybody in because I need people speaking positivity in life and saying, girl, you can do this. I've seen you do it before. And I have a partner. My husband is very, very good at that. He's very resolute. He's not creative. If you see him doing something creative in videos, because I told him to do it. So he does listen well, but he doesn't have that. He's very logical and very like this. And I need that balance in my life. I need that. So, okay, I know it's 10 o'clock.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Chefs Ben and Amanda, who own Beanbox, and also now it's Belly Market and Peachtree Catering, all of the food stuffs here in Columbia. So they're a dynamic duo, and they're friends of mine and just really fun to be around. So if you're available, we'd love to have you come back next month. They're also going to be catering our breakfast and coffee, so come back, tell your friends. I don't care why you're here, I just want to get you here. So I think it'll be a good experience. But anyway, thank you so much, Adonica. I just love, you do have like a really good vibe, so I just like being around you. I'm not naturally a super positive person. I'm a realist, and so like I need people like you around to like amp me up, and it makes me feel good on a Friday. So thank you so much for being here. Thank all of you. Grab a donut or a cup of coffee on your way out, please. I cannot take all those home. But anyway, thanks so much for being here, everybody.
And tell your friends.
Yeah.